Hey there, guys and guys. Welcome back to another Allen's Indoors. Time for another Weird Wednesday installment. You might have noticed I've been absent the past few. Life kind of got in the way. Things have happened. Everything's settling down now, so we're back. Today's topic is, well, I'm not even going to put a name to it right now because honestly, I don't know what took place. But I'll just describe the circumstances that happened, and you guys can make your own decisions on what you think it is. I have a feeling I know what it was, but I have no proof of it. It's hard to imagine it being anything else, especially in that area. So, without further ado, let's just kind of jump into it. This particular incident took place. Well, let's start with some background first, and you'll get an idea of kind of where I'm going with this segment. Back in 1974, on the eastern shore of Maryland, down in Somerset County, little town called Princess Anne, which is my hometown. We lived out in an area off of West Post Office Road. It's about 4 miles or so, 4.5 miles outside of town. And it was named for a man called West who had a post office in the area. So West Post Office Road is named for Mr. West, who had a post office out in that area. Kind of a fun fact, a farmer that owned the farm right across the road from me, they actually moved that building to that farm, which was later used for a chicken house, I believe, a poultry house. So not too far away. But anyway, in 1974, there was a report filed by 2 individuals of seeing a large, hairy creature walking on 2 legs through the woods out there near West Post Office in that area. It was in the newspapers, so forth. I graduated high school in 1974. Where that sighting took place was only about 1.5 miles away from our house where I was living. So, kind of set the stage. Now, fast forward a couple years, 1976. It would have been, I'm thinking about in the last part of August of 1976. In the little community that we lived in, I was living at home with my parents at the time. Our neighbors had cattle, pigs, and so forth. Kids were in 4-H. They went to fairs and they showed their livestock at the fairs. So this took place probably the last week of August in about 1976. The Maryland State Fair was going on, and most of my neighbors in the neighborhood, everyone was gone. They were attending the fair, showing their animals for 4-H and so forth. So my mom and dad had a convenience store located on Route 13 in the town of Princess Anne. I had gone in early. This was a Saturday morning. I had gone in early to open the store, and then I came home about 9:15, 9:30 in the morning, something like that. Came home, drove in, pulled in the driveway there, got out of my car, and I heard a sound I'd never heard before, and I lived in that area all my life. It was an undulating moan. It's hard to describe, but it's kind of like, just going like that. It just weird. It kind of sent chills up my spine. I'm like, what in the world? And I realized it was coming about 1/2 mile away from the house, down the road. It would have been towards the west. Right across, our nearest neighbors lived not quite a half mile away from us. There was a little field there, little jot of woods that came out, so that the woods was about, I want to say, maybe 100 yards, if that, from the road where this stand of woods was. And it was huge. It went back. There was a huge tract of forest that was owned by timber companies. And then that tract of woods went on to like the Pocomoke State Forest, which I believe is like 16,000 acres of forest. This particular woodland was owned by a huge timber company. I mean, a lot of forest, huge expanse of trees. So, and we, as a kid growing up, we had mini bikes, horses, ponies, had explored almost every inch of that place. My cousins and I would ride through there, explore every fire road through there, kind of knew it by the back of our hand. Never really experienced anything unusual going back through there, and all the times and all the time we spent back in those forests. This particular day, though, I heard that moaning sound, and I could not figure out what it was. Growing up, we did not have coyotes in the area. That never had seen one, never heard anyone talk about it. They just weren't there. Never really even heard anything about bobcat in the area. We had raccoons, we had some fox, that kind of thing, deer, obviously. Some turkeys, although they came a little bit later on when they were introduced more, the turkey population grew. We did have, sometimes every once in a while, there would be packs of feral dogs roaming the area. And they would kind of come and go, would die off, because of predation, would be shot, eliminated. But periodically you would have small and rather small groups, like 5 to 6 animals, not huge packs. But nothing that you would really hear, anything moaning or howling or anything such as that. We had screech owls, barn owl, that kind of thing. You're familiar with all of those sounds. But this particular sound went on, and it was just loud, and it was continuous. And I could not figure out what in the world this could be. So, curious, I started walking down the road, walking down West Post Office Road down towards the sound to see if I could figure out what it was. So I get there and I'm listening. I realize, okay, it's in that wood line. I walked up to my neighbors, and they had 2 huge brick pillars at the end of their driveway. And I walked up so that I was kind of like in between, standing on the edge of the road in between the brick pillars of their driveway, looking towards the south to that wood line. I walk up, and I'm hearing this undulating moan the whole way. Never heard anything like it before. So I turn, and I'm facing the wood line. And as I'm facing the wood line, the moaning stopped. Well, okay. And I'm trying to see if I can see what's making it. I can see nothing but vegetation there. But about, say, 30 to 40 feet back, all of a sudden, 2 maple trees, and the maple trees, they were about 30 feet tall. And it was hard to see because of the underbrush and the briars low, anything there. But the tops of the trees, could kind of look up there and see, and they were being shaken violently and rocked back and forth. There was no wind that day, but these trees were rocking and being shaken so hard and swaying back and forth that I could hear the sound of the leaves as they were moving through the air, like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And I can still see nothing doing this. But I'm like, whatever it was immensely strong and powerful. And all of a sudden, that whoosh, that stopped, and I hear this screaming roar is all I can describe it. And it's, I mean, it's cliche. Oh, I felt it in my chest. Well, I felt it. It just reverberated through my body. The volume and intensity was just incredible. And this screaming roar, I mean, scared the crap out of me. And then the tree, they just started shaking even more violently, to the point I'm like, okay, I'm over here. Nobody's home. There's no one here to help me. I've walked a half mile from home. I got no weapon. I got nothing. I need to get out of here. So, and I didn't want to turn and just run because I didn't want to turn my back to it. So I'm kind of still facing it, crab walking as fast as I can to put distance between me and whatever that was. Once I got about 25 yards down the road towards home, the shaking of the trees stopped and that moan started back up again. So, and it's just going. And the weird thing about it was when you would moan or somebody's yelling, oh, you wait for the intake of breath and then it starts again. This, I never heard. This was a continuous moan. And I don't know if it was able to still do that and breathe at the same time. I don't know. All I know is what had to be some sort of animal. I work my way, get back home. I'm sitting out on the front steps of the house, just listening to it, trying to figure out what it was. This is prior to internet. This is, I mean, nothing. I don't really know how to figure out what this is. I'm sitting out there. My mom comes home about, I want to say she came home about 10:45 in the morning. She and my dad had gone to relieve me. Then she came back home. She had some stuff to do at the house. So she pulls up in the driveway. I'm sitting on the front steps of the house. She gets out of the car, stands there. I see her stop. She turns and she swivels and looks over to the west again where this moaning is. She turns and looks back at me. She goes, what is that sound? I don't know. So I explained to her what I had, gone through since I got home. And we were both, she stands out on the porch for about 5 minutes listening to it, and she goes on in the house. I'm there, and about 10 minutes after she went inside the house, it stopped. Have never heard it, since then. Don't know what it was. Have no clue, but whatever, it was back there in the woods. Apparently didn't like me being in the general area, and gone, So that was odd. Still don't know what it could have been. I have heard sounds, and I'm going to try and find them. The guy supposed recorded some purported Bigfoot sounds, and I listened to them, and it's not like the Ohio howl. It's nothing like that. But he had actually had some sounds, and it was the exact sound, that undulating moan that I heard. He had recorded, not there, someplace else, but that was pretty much the exact sound that I had heard that day. And he alleges that it's an alleged Bigfoot howl, moan. So go forward. In the meantime, I had gotten married. I got married in 1977 and built a house next door to my mom and dad's, towards the west of their house. They deeded some property to me. We put the house up, built the house, and my wife and I were sitting outside. It was a July evening. I don't remember exactly what evening it was, but it would have been in, let's see, I'm going to say it was July of 79, maybe. No, 70, I think it was 78, excuse me. July of 78, I believe is when it was. We were sitting out about 11 o'clock at night. It was a warm evening. I didn't have central air at the time. We had some windows open, had a air conditioner, had a window unit for the bedroom. Well, we went out, nice night. We were sitting out on our front steps. And all of a sudden, across the road from us, in the woods beyond there, and that woods was maybe a quarter mile away from our porch, past some fields. There's some poultry houses there, and the woods was on the other side of those poultry houses. So we're listening, and all of a sudden it sounded just like a woman being murdered. I mean, the screams and the noise, again, the volume and intensity was just incredible. Again, I had lived in that area all my life. Had never heard any sound like that before. And this was different than the moans that I heard, 2 years prior. But this scream and, hoots, and we could hear stuff, and it was at the time. Then I realize now, I didn't know what it was at the time, but we heard wood knocks and these screams. Like, what in the world is that? And we listened to that for about a couple hours. It went on. So I want to say it would happen sporadically over the course of like a couple weeks. Some nights it would be quiet. Other night you would hear this screaming in the woods. So to the point that after a couple weeks, I went over to the neighbor that lived across the road. It was in the woods behind his house where this was happening. And I was just asking, hey, have you heard all these noises going on at night? And he's like, yeah, I think it's birds mating. Well, he had just bought the property only about 6 months prior. He was originally from Washington, D.C., from the city. He was a disabled vet. And I'm like, no, I've lived here I've never heard that before. It's not birds mating, especially birds mating in the middle of the night. That doesn't even make any sense. And I said, have you noticed anything other than that weird since you've been here? And he goes, well, yeah, a few things. So he says, well, come here, I'll show you something. Okay, so we walked back, and in the far back field of his property, just by the wood line in the far corner, there used to be still was a pasture all the way to the back side of his property to the south. And in the southwest corner was a little pond that used to be for cattle, cattle pond. Well, right there by the banks of that, he goes, yeah, I found it. It was a dead deer. It was a small little little button buck. And we looked at it. He said, the weird thing is, its neck was broken, and the left front leg and shoulder was ripped off of this thing. It's only 3 legs. You could see where something had ripped it, not bitten, not chewed, ripped this off, and the leg was gone. And he was thinking, he said, yeah, I think this is roadkill. It got hit by a car or a truck or something. Like, well, I find that hard to believe, because the road where we were was almost a half mile away. Like, there's no way this deer has a broken neck on 3 legs and made it from there to here, navigating the ditches and everything it would have to do to get back to where it is right here. The other really weird thing about it was that we had a lot of buzzards, because it was a huge area with poultry farms, and when the farmers would pick up their dead chickens, a lot of them would just have a pit on their property. They would throw them in there. Buzzards would come in, do it. This was before they started using incinerators. They would just throw them in a pit. The carcasses would rot, go back down. Buzzards would come in, eat the offal, the stuff from them, and so forth. This deer had been there for over a week, he told me. He found it, this dude, like a week and a half prior to him showing it to me. The buzzards had not touched it. And what was even more amazing is no flies, nothing. No flies on it, nothing had touched it. So we're like, what could this be, causing it? That was just very odd in and of itself. And then he says, yeah, is that I actually, because we have, it was called a Minokan Watershed Project, where a lot of the ditches run into big tax ditches that run into the Minokan River to help drain the farmland in that area. Well, because of that, we would get muskrats that would swim up, river otters, that kind of thing would come up there. Well, he used to set muskrat traps out. He would set muskrat traps because they would tear the banks up and mess things up. So he would go out and you would sell the meat, would sell the hides. So he would go out and set muskrat traps in his ditches. And he would go there, the last time of day that he would check them would be at 10 o'clock in the evening. And he used to carry a little 22 pistol with him. If you go out, find one that wasn't dead, he'd just dispatch it with his 22, take it, reset the traps, and go back on. This one particular night he was out there in the furthest field away from his house, over near Woodline, so it would have been on the east side of his property, over a quarter mile away from his house. I mean, he was at almost the furthest point from his house it could be in this big ditch line. And being a disabled vet, he'd walk with a limp. He would have to kind of get down on his butt and scoot down the bank, because these ditches were fairly deep, to get to where his trap was set in this ditch. So he had done that, walked there. He said he was only maybe 30 feet or so from the woods line, where the ditch went there, woods line right there. So he's down there, it just got down there, kind of just stood up again, was looking at his trap, and he said out of peripheral vision, he caught like a large shadow just to the west of him. And he said he, kind of glanced over. He said there's a little bit of moon, and he sees this shadow down there. He said all of a sudden it grows, and he realizes, okay, something just stood up and turned and starts charging down the ditch line right at him, because he was standing between this thing and the woods. He said before he could even react, this thing charging down there went right by him, kind of shoved him out of the way, knocked him into the ditch, and kept on running, and boom, off into the woods it went. He said, I don't know what it was. I know it was huge, and it was running on two legs. It wasn't a cow. It wasn't a deer. At first he thought it may have been a deer, but then when it ran by, he said, okay, no, it was huge. It was on 2 feet. It ran by me and into the woods. So he gets out, pretty shaken, and he said, I don't know what it was, but it was something big, to the point where he stopped checking his traps. He said, I'm not going to check my traps after dark anymore. And even when he went down there now, along with the 22 that he carried his 44 Magnum with him as well to do that. So definitely kind of something strange. Now fast forward a few more years in the future. I've been married, started having kids. I used to go squirrel hunting back in the Pocomoke State Forest, which was huge tract of land, not too far from my house. Go back out there. And I would sometimes be the only person out there. I would park on the road there and walk back in numerous fire trails that went back in to this state ground, this state forest. So I would just kind of still hunt through these fire trails, squirrel hunting. And I've been back there and driving back in through, no other cars. You realize, okay, I am the only person for miles around. There was no houses, nothing there, just forest land. So I would be back in there, and I would hear knocks in the woods. And sometimes you would hear farmers, when they were using a disc out in their field, the disc would start loading up with dirt, and you'd hear them bang, bang, as they would do these knocks to knock the dirt off of their disc blades. So I'm in this state where I'm squirrel hunting, and you hear these knocks, boom, boom. It sounded very similar to that. And that's what I put it down to until I finally realized, wait a minute, there are no fields within miles of this place. There's no tractors. I mean, if I'm hearing that happen, I would hear the sound, because if any trucks or cars went by on that road, it was called Old Furnace Road, you could hear the sound of the vehicle as it went by. So I'm like, I have heard heard nothing that would cause this. All I am hearing is this knocking sound, which I did not realize at the time. I just kind of put it down. Oh, it's a farmer's doing something. Now I realize it could not have been. It had to be something else. But there was one particular area one road, area in that forest I loved to squirrel hunt. That was my main place. I would walk back in, and you would see there would be small ditches that you would kind of cross, and these roads went back in there. The place was huge. I would walk in one particular spot I would get back into, and it didn't happen all the time. I would say 40% of the time I would go back in there, and you would cross this one particular little ditch, and right on the other side of the state land there was some private ground that came in there. It was a kind of a mismatch in there, mishmash of stuff. And I would cross it. Sometimes everything would be great. Would go on in there, still hunt, work my way back out. But about 40% of the time, I would go in there, and it would be dead silent. You would not hear squirrel sounds, bird, nothing. It's like everything just dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And, kind of walking in, looking. And I was always drawn. I would go there until I'm like, okay, I just felt uncomfortable. I'm not going to go any further. And I was always drawn to one particular part of those trees. Well, the road kind of curved around, and it was always like, okay, there's something, I'm being watched. There's something over in this one area, and it was always that same area. When I went back, there's something there. And I could never see anything, never heard anything. Like I say, it was just deathly quiet. And I would sit there, okay, maybe it's me. I'm walking in, I've got everything spooked. I'll just calmly let everything settle down, And I would wait, sometimes 20 minutes to a half hour. And no, it's still silent. And it finally gets to the point where, okay, I need to leave because this is just totally weird. So I would turn around and I'd work my way out. And it seemed like when I crossed that little teeny ditch, I mean, it's only like 8 or 10 inches. It's just a little dip, really, through there. But when I crossed that, get back in there, it seemed like the woods, everything picked back up again. Everything was good. Go on, and I would still hunt back out. And all the feelings of, trepidation, dread, they all left. Okay, we're working our way back through again. But yet, then sometimes it never happened enough to keep me from going into that other area. I would still, every time I hunt, I would always go back there. Like I say, 60% of the time, it was fine. I'd go back in there. I've got squirrels out of that area, no issue. But just certain times, like something was in the air, I would go there, and dead silent, something weird would take place. Just bizarre. Now, I know I started the program and said that, Bigfoot sightings were there, and that I heard sounds that I have since found were attributable to Bigfoot. Was it Bigfoot? I don't know. I know that supposedly to have been seen in the area. I have some other stories related to what we used to call the egg people that used to be in that area that I will talk with you about on another Weird Wednesday. We will go over some of the other Bigfoot sightings that have been attributable to Maryland and in that particular area. Kind of some interesting things that took place again in that area. I've never seen one there in Maryland where I grew up. I've just had these experiences that I've related to you take place. So you can decide what you think. You can think that I'm full of crap, or if you know or you have a reasonable, rational explanation, please put it in the comments. I would love to know because I don't know. But if you got an idea, let me know. What do you think it is? What do you think it could possibly be? Let's get a discussion going about this. But if you like this kind of content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel would be great, or leave something in the comments. If something like this happened to you, do you have any idea what it could be? Please let me know. Let's get a discussion going. But until the next Weird Wednesday, this is Alan. Thanks for tuning in, and keep looking around, keep looking up, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.